Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists Podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And today we've got Jade Barker on the line. So Jade is a former Taekwondo practitioner who's moved into the MMA scene. And we're really interested to talk to her today about what she's been up to, the transition between the traditional martial arts into the MMA scene, and talk a little bit about what she's doing now with running on coaching kids martial arts. So hello, Jade.
Hi, how are you doing?
Yes, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, we're good, Jade. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for taking the time out to talk to us.
No worries.
I'm going to kick off with the first question. And this is the one really just to lay the platform to our listeners so they can get a bit of an understanding about you. So we just really want to know, can you give us a bit of an insight into your backstory, where you grew up, how you felt about school, home life, and ultimately how you got into martial arts?
Yeah, basically just sort of growing up was all just normal. The only thing that was probably the most abnormal was just the amount that I just used to like want to fight all the other kids down the road. And
Okay.
I used to just be boys down the road. So I just used to like just fight all of them. And then I never used to like get invited to play again because they just used to be like, you're too rough.
Do you have older brothers, Jade?
No, I'm
Okay.
the oldest, just me and my sister. But so that was all like, I was always sort of like that. And then school was all like great. I was really good at school. I never even had one detention. That's how good I was. And but yeah, when I sort of being sort of like almost like that kid that just wanted to do like all like rough stuff, basically. I used to like watch like Turtles, Power Rangers, all of that stuff. And then
Who's your favourite turtle?
Michelangelo.
Good call.
And I just said to my dad one day, I was like, I want to be a Power Ranger. And he was like, I'll take you somewhere where you can be a Power Ranger. So he took me to my Taekwondo club. So I basically just started there.
Okay, so what type of Taekwondo club was that? Is ITF, WTF? What
It was
organisation?
actually a brand of its own. So it was actually it's called ITA, which was a little bit more like WTF, and it was more it sort of looked a little bit more karate like. So it was almost like a little strand of its own. But out of them all, I would definitely say it was probably lent more towards almost like a karate sort of style.
Okay, so what sort of sparring style did you adopt then? Was it a more of a karate style or more of a Taekwondo style sparring?
Probably more Taekwondo, to be honest. It was so I used to use a lot of flashy kicks. Like I'm super short, but yeah, I've still got very good kicks and you know, head kicks and stuff like that. So I used to come away with gold on a lot of tournaments and stuff like that, which was awesome. But then over time, like it was one of those things that the more I started watching like UFC and stuff like that, it just made me think like I don't want to just do this.
Yeah,
You know, I want to move on and sort of just do things that were hard, that was going to push me a lot more, but then also tougher as in terms of the sport as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So just take you a step back then. So we like to really delve into the nitty gritty. So can you remember your first Taekwondo grading?
Yeah, my first Taekwondo grading, I was sat in a hall. I didn't know anyone else that was in my little category. And I was crying. Like I was like 5. I just kept on crying. And I remember someone laughing at me because I had a vest on underneath my suit.
Yeah.
And like, so I was already, you know, upset because I was nervous. And then someone like taking the mick out of my vest, like that, like got me even more. And like, I remember my mum come over and she was like, you know, telling me like, it'll be all right and all that. And she had a white top on. And she was like, oh, I need to go because otherwise they'll think that I'm grading as well. And I know,
Thanks, Mum.
leaving me to it. So yeah, it was like, I used to cry a lot going into like the classes, and like my instructor at the time used to just take me in by the hand, and then after like 10 minutes I'd be fine. But yeah, the first little while I used to cry a lot.
Why do you think that was? What were you worried about going into the class or leaving parents? What was that
No,
about?
I am a crier. Like on anything, like my coach Brian Adams, like he'll tell you, like before fights I'll cry. Like I'll watch a slightly emotional advert about a dog on telly and I'll cry. Like I think I'm just a very natural
Reminds me
crier.
of you, Jackie.
You know, I'm touching my feelings, Gavin. There's nothing wrong with that. You should try it sometime. Okay. So, quick question we'd like to know. Have you ever failed a grading?
Yeah, so it was called like a senior first degree. So I got up to that, and my instructor at the time seemed to almost have it was almost like he was definitely going to fail me. You know, and you sort of like every single class, like I was like, you know, like trying my absolute hardest, and he was still criticizing. And our assistant coach kept on sort of talking to my parents, and they were like, look, I'm sorry, like I don't really know why he's doing this at the moment. Yeah. And he ended up not passing me on sparring, and my sparring was still far and above like a lot of other people's, and he still didn't pass me on it. And that was all. And obviously I was devastated. It was my first one that I didn't pass. Sure. But then I think really it was almost like a test. He just wanted to see how I dealt with it. And I think he almost wanted to bring me back down to reality, because at the time I was very good at Taekwondo. So I was winning a lot of tournaments and people put me on this pedestal, and I almost wanted to take it down a little bit. Yeah. So like now, do you know what? I completely forgot about it until you mentioned it. But like now thinking about it.
Don't cry though. Please don't cry.
No But now like thinking about it, I'm like, actually, that probably done me a world of good at the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, myself and Jackson have both failed one grade in our Taekwondo career. And it's quite a defining moment. It is quite a defining moment, because some people just pick themselves up and get back on the horse and like us. And I know we both sort of said, well, look, you know what? That's never going to happen to me again. I'm not going to fail at anything again. And you know what? You don't. You make it a mission, and it's like, you know what? I am not going through that feeling again of having to turn up at the dojo and walk in when everyone else is getting their belts, and then they turn around to you and go, sorry, you know, you didn't pass. And it's just like,
I mean, just to paint the picture for us, my dad was my army instructor, and he's old school, isn't he?
Well,
pretty. I like to call him pretty militant. And
brutal was the word, Jackie.
Brutal, was it brutal? What he used to do, you know, not like now. If you fail a student now, you phone them up and you tell them why, and talk to their parents, and it's all very inclusive. We lined up, everyone's getting their belts. Gavin, no, you failed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he just turned around to me and said, "You were crap. You were crap." I'm like, this was my black stripe grading, right? And he said, "You did your patterns too fast. You look rubbish. You were rubbish," and that was it. And that was all you got.
That was the feedback. Yeah.
And these days, most people, I'll say most people, I might be wrong. Maybe I'm painting a gloomier picture, but I think a lot of people these days won't return after that. They'll be like, you know what? I'm never going back to that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going back. I'm going to really get this black belt one way or another. And, you know, and I'm not going to go through that again. I'm sure there was times where I thought, do I really want to go back? I don't know. It was, you know, we're going back.
No, I remember.
30 odd years ago.
Dan. Yeah. When I failed my second dan, similar scenario. Yeah, didn't pass. My mate got his black belt, his second dan belt, and I'd never felt so humiliated in my life. And I just never wanted to go through that humiliation again. So, you know, it's probably in hindsight, it was a really good thing, because it taught me that you've got to prepare. You know, I was a little bit, probably like yourself, a little bit blasé. I was getting good at fighting. I've been doing Taekwondo for 10 years. I just, I'm going to get it. Whether I was good on the day or I wasn't good on the day is irrelevant. I didn't pass. And I thought, I can never let that happen again. I've really got to focus on anything I do to make sure I never, not so much fail, but make sure I pass.
Yeah, 100%. Mm.
Yeah, interesting. I would like just to know, because a lot of martial artists at some stage have failed a grading for whatever reason, whether it's, like you said, the instructor wants to almost knock you down a peg just to see what your character's like.
Yeah.
Or whether actually you were rubbish because you didn't put the time or effort in. And you'd be surprised the amount of martial artists that we speak to have actually failed grading, but they come back and they learn from it, and it makes them stronger characters.
To me, that's like the whole thing of martial arts, isn't it? Like it's everything is all about your character and stuff like that. And it's literally like one of two paths. Like you said, you either get better from it, you either get, you know, grow from it, or you just go, not for me.
Not for me. I'm quitting. I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, martial arts is a series of mini failures, isn't it? You know, because
100%.
that's all it is. You know, you think when the first time you tried to learn a side kick, you didn't just get it straight away. You failed at doing that side kick. You failed at it. You failed at it. You failed it, and eventually you got it. And that's what it is. Again, you know, it's a whole journey of mini failures to get where you want to get to. And I think failure, you know, and we talk about this on the podcast a lot. You know, it's something that shouldn't be shied away from. It should be something that you should be trying to get there, because the only people that don't fail at stuff are people that don't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
You know. So you turn around, I failed at that. It shouldn't be something. Well, you say, I failed at it, yeah, but I'm going to get it next time. You know.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So moving on then into your competition. Can you remember your first competition?
Yeah. So I actually, I post it every now and again on Facebook. It's like it just makes me laugh, like, because I'm like so small. My instructor's like huge, but. I got into, I think I was a green belt, and I went in the blue belt category. And I remember I got second place in my forms and then first place in sparring. So I ended up beating like all the grades higher. And I remember being like so greedy, they were even giving out little spirit awards, like thank you for taking part sort of awards. And I was like, do I get one of them as well?
Do I get some sweets? Do I get a bag of sweets as well?
Oh, good effort. So how many fights did you have? And what was those first fights like?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Like, thinking about it now, like, you know, like, it seems like an absolute lifetime ago, but like I used to just compete so much and it was just so enjoyable. And then obviously as you get a bit older, it just becomes a little bit more of a serious thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I absolutely loved competing. And to be fair, like it was just what I was good at.
Yeah,
oh, sounds good.
And you did forms as well, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever win on your patterns?
I was more like second place, like for forms. Like I would get a few first places, but they were more for sparring.
Okay,
cool.
So what was the point then where you thought, you know what, I've done my Taekwondo stuff. You know, I've got my black belt. I'm competing. What's next? You know, obviously you sound like you really want to keep pushing yourself. Was it an easy transition into the MMA scene, or do you find it quite difficult?
It was it was actually like quite natural. So I think I was like 12, 13. I remember the UFC used to get shown on Bravo on a Sunday, and I remember my dad coming in and was like, Jade, you got to watch this. I've been watching it. It's called UFC. Like, and you know, he's like saying how brutal it was and all this sort of stuff. So I watched the Nick Diaz and Diego Sanchez fight, and I literally watched it and was like, "This is the best thing I've ever seen." And then,
Diego Sanchez. He's the guy that you always used to get everyone's back and choke him out, wasn't he? A little small dude.
Yeah,
like a little monkey used to climb on your back and choke you out.
Like he won the first season of The Ultimate Fighter.
That's
so
it.
I was like buzzing like when I saw it, and was like, I said to my dad, I was like, I want to do this. And then so I was still at Taekwondo at the time, and I was starting to get into a little bit of trouble in Taekwondo because I was starting to go a little bit, because I was starting to watch things and almost, I thought, this is a fighting sport, yet no one's going hard.
Spinning elbows. No spinning elbows.
Well, I think I was like throwing a spinning back fist.
Yeah.
And like a couple
it's
of
fine as long as you're sighted.
Yeah, and there was just a few times where like my instructor was like, had to pull me to the side and say, look, like you can't be doing this. And I was getting a bit frustrated because I thought I want to sort of progress and sort of go a bit harder and do all these things, but it just wasn't sort of panning out. And so time was sort of going on. I was teaching Taekwondo at the time as well, and then I ended up going to an MMA gym down the road, and I went there, and I remember I was only just watching UFC and stuff, so I was only like messing around like with it, and I remember I like managed to sub like one of their guys that was there. And at the time I was like, this is amazing, but then now thinking back, I just think maybe it was a very terrible school, and because like I should have been doing that just from watching a few UFC fights. But then so by this point I was like 16, 17, so I was sort of in that stage for quite a long time where I wanted to do more. And then so that school that I was at, they ended up shutting down. Turns out the guy wasn't even insured.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't the best place to be at. And so someone there mentioned that they knew a guy in Portsmouth called Colin Howes who coached jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
So at the time, so by this point, I was 17 and he coached from 18 and above. So I had to sort of lie and say, oh yeah, I was 18. And then he let me do his jiu-jitsu class. And it was sort of from there that then I was able to he was running like a striking class as well. He'd fought in MMA, and Colin trains, he trained with Novia now. So trained with Jose Aldo, Vitor Shaolin, Thales Leighton, trained with some really big names over when he trained in Brazil. So I was like, oh my God, by this point, that was just, he was God, watching Colin. Yeah. So I started training with him more and more, and then heard of a gym opening across the road called Gym 01. And I'd heard of, they come from a place called South Coast Submissions.
Would that be your t-shirt? That'd be the t-shirt that you're wearing?
Yeah, Gym 01. Always representing.
Branding as well.
Yeah. So yeah, just from there, so I just moved over and with Colin just training jiu-jitsu, and then they started sort of asking if there was any sort of female instructors to teach their kickboxing classes. So obviously I could do that, and I was qualified PT and stuff as well. So I started coaching there, and then I was like, wow, so now I can actually start doing MMA properly. So I started kickboxing, MMA, just started almost being like a jack of all trades.
Okay, so how did you find so talk us through your first MMA fight then.
So my first MMA fight was with a really good girl called Fionn Davies. She's like a judo champ. Now she's like a BJJ world champ. And I fought at 61 kilos. So I actually got quite chubby, when I was a teenager, and it didn't really leave. And I sort of thought oh yeah, that was my natural weight, when it really wasn't. So my first fight was at 61 kilos against Fionn. And the first punch I threw, near enough, dropped her. But then after that, she literally just grappled me straight to the ground. And then she had me in an Americana. And I was like, oh my God, she's got this on. And I just remember thinking I've got to go to work tomorrow or on Monday. And I just it was let's just tap. But yeah, so my first one, so it was over pretty quickly. But to be honest, again, it's almost that sort of defining moment. I literally was done it and was like, this is 100% what I want to do.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Make me think any different.
It was exactly what you thought it was going to be.
Well, obviously I thought I'd win, but it was exactly I literally was yeah, this is the path I want to take.
Did you have to work extra hard to get your ground game up? Was that something that was quite challenging for you?
No, my ground game was actually very good. At the time, I was blue belt in jiu-jitsu. I still do jiu-jitsu now, but she was just that much better. Like I said, where she was a judo, I actually consider myself more a grappler than I do a striker.
Okay.
But yeah, her grappling was just elite, and I think we could probably roll 10 out of 10, and she'd win 9. Do you know what I mean? And I'd probably just get the odd fluke. She is a legit girl.
I suppose that's the judo roots, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's funny because when we obviously was chatting to Mark the Wizard Weir this morning.
Yeah.
And I was asking the same sort of question. I mean, because obviously he does a lot of coaching, obviously for mixed martial arts now. He's got it's sort of his own camp really, where he's teaching and progressing people through the ranks. And my question to him was, do you think it's better to come from a traditional martial art background into the MMA route, or do you think it's better off to start with a blank canvas and then try to learn everything? And it was a resounding better to come from a traditional martial art background, not so much for the experience and the expertise that you have, but the mental side. You've got the courtesy, the discipline. You understand those sides of it. Otherwise, if you're not careful, I mean, we see it, and obviously myself and Jackie, we've got our own schools. So we often see people come along and they're like, yeah, I want to learn how to fight. And we're like, well, yeah, this is not really, we teach Taekwondo, traditional Taekwondo, and you have to go through the belts. They're not interested. They want the shortcut. They want to just go and become an MMA superstar without any sort of traditional background. Yeah, exactly.
They want the profile picture of them with their arm raised.
Yeah, exactly. And he said, if you're not careful, what you'll get is you'll get the ones that become arrogant in the sports are the ones that have come from almost like the street background where they've come in, they've won a few fights. Yeah, I'm an MMA fighter and I do this. And where if you originally come from a traditional background, you know, you're not like that because you've got the grounding and you know you've been through that. You understand the courtesy and the indomitable spirit of martial arts.
Exactly. I think it's I think martial arts breeds like really like good things into a person. You know, the amount of kids that you sort of see that end up doing martial arts and then they change completely. Yeah. And you know, even down to like you just being like a humble person. Like a lot of people just sort of rocking up and just doing everything. It doesn't seem to sort of install those little things into you.
I think core values, isn't it? It doesn't install those core values into you. You're right. I mean, it can if you have a good coach and you run a strict school. There's no doubt you can do that, but it just makes it, I think, a little bit more difficult, without a doubt. So, go on, Gavin.
I was going to say is in the world of UFC, then who would you say, and MMA in general, I suppose, who is some of the role models that you look up to, you know, that have maybe inspired you? So you want to emulate, I suppose.
Well, do you know what? Straight up, like first off, like I watched Chuck Liddell and I just absolutely loved him. Yeah. I just loved everything about him. Like I just, you know, you watch him now and you're like, oh my god, his striking looks terrible. But like at the time, his striking is so superior. It was like it really was like, and that was the thing. And I remember reading his book and just sort of just like hearing like his mindset and like I just loved him. And, you know, I loved how, like, he was just cool, like, outside. Like, obviously, he looks like a fighter, but, like, in terms of, like, how he speaks and stuff like that, and that he's actually, like, a decent guy. Yeah. And that is what I love about MMA. You've got so many people that just assume MMA is, like, this cage fighting and people are a certain way. Yeah. And then when they're not, and it takes I love that. Like, and I love...
But do you not think that's just martial arts in general, I think, as well, or people that fight competitively? Because I know when I was at school, you know, every weekend, you know, me and Jackson used to hop on the bus and we used to go squad training on the Saturday morning, and then we used to go and fight in a competition on the Sunday, and that was literally every week. You know, we used to get a magazine and we used to find all the local competitions and we say we're going to that one. So we spent sort of probably 50% of our time either training in the dojang or competing in competitions. And a lot of the friends that I used to hang around with or at school, they were every Friday and Saturday, they were going out scrapping. You know, they were looking for fights. They were in the pub and they were like, oh yeah, and there's a big fight going off and come and join us and all that. And I was like, look, why would I want to do that? I fight every weekend. That's what I do every weekend. Why would I want to, you know, I'm not interested. Got nothing to prove. And I think if you're a fighter and that's what you do all the time, you are quite a humble person because you've got nothing to prove.
Yeah,
and
when you've got these people at work and they're like, oh, I done this, that, and the other at the weekend, you're like, I really don't care. Like that just doesn't impress me in the slightest. Yeah, you know, I was more impressed if you said, oh, I done my first MMA session the other day as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's your take on Ronda?
I respect her a lot, like, and she done a lot for women's MMA and for women's sport in general. But as a person, I'm not a fan. You know, like even like when you sort of watch like the Ultimate Fighter and just like see just almost just how she sort of holds herself and conducts herself. And then when Misha came in, and you know, even when she went to shake her hand at times, like after fights and stuff, and she just used to, you know, walk off in this like way, like the thing is I'm not like that. So, you know, and I think like when you're at that level and when you've got so many like young people looking up to you,
you conduct yourself a little bit better, shouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all about how you conduct yourself, I think.
We had Rosie Sexton on the show. I don't know if you listened to her podcast. Yeah, but she had some good stories to tell, Jackson, didn't she?
Yeah, on the UFC, she was obviously the first British woman in the UFC, so that was really good. And it's, you know, it was similar stories to yourself. She, you know, she's Taekwondo expert, wanted to do a little bit more, and then she wanted to see if it could actually work in the street. So that's when she went into a full contact, and it was in its really early stages then of MMA.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's a bit of a, not a bit, she was a female pioneer of mixed martial arts in the UK.
Yeah.
So what's
good listen.
So what's your sort of future plans then, Jade? What's your life goal, if you like? You're still only young. I know you might feel like you're getting old, but you're still a whippersnapper in our eyes. So what's your what do you want to achieve in your life? You know, what's your ultimate goal for your martial arts and I suppose career prospects and stuff like that?
You know what, I just want to go as far as I can, really. You know, this has obviously been my life. Like, I've been doing it at such a long age. It's obviously never going to leave. You know, the amount of times which I thought, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe I shouldn't compete. There's always something which just pulls me straight back, that just wants to do it again. And so I don't think that will ever leave. So I think I may as well just use it and just get as far as I can. Or see, I'd love to get into the UFC. That would be like the ultimate goal. Like, but at the same time, even if I, you know, just had a load of amazing fights, like on smaller shows or when Bellator, like that would still just be like, just what an accomplishment. I'd love to just look back and go, wow, I did that, and I made the most of my skills. And the thing is as well, is I think it's cool when you've got so many like people looking up to you, like kids and adults and stuff as well. I just sort of want to leave like just a really positive like footprint, you know, and like and a bit of a legacy, if you will. I know it's like quite a big word, to be fair, like, but yeah, I definitely like want to leave that, like whether it's on my kids or kids that I teach. Do you know what I mean?
No,
yeah.
Definitely.
So you teach children. Is it kickboxing? Is it you teach?
Yeah. So I teach kids kickboxing.
Okay, and is that something you want to pursue as like a proper career, or is it just a gap filler until?
Yeah. So it literally like it was. So before I had to get a mortgage, like it was literally what I did all the time. And then when I sort of had to get a mortgage, you know, then I obviously had to get another job as well. But I don't really tell anyone about that. I just sort of say, oh yeah, I'm a martial arts coach. So that is like my passion, and that is what, like, ultimately I'd love just to go back to doing that.
Okay. So what do you do for your day job then, Jade?
I work at Estee Lauder.
Okay.
It's nothing glamorous. It's not fun.
I bet they love you when you turn up for work with a black eye, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes they're a bit confused. Like, they're like, why you got a black eye? And I'm like, I'll be like, I was sparring this lad, and they were like, a boy? And I'm like, yeah, like, and they don't really get it. But what gets me is that a lot of them as well, they're very much like, they'll say like, don't you just want to go home and just, you know, watch telly, like when you finish work? And I'm like, no. Like, my life starts when I finish that job.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Not unless it's Cobra Kai.
That's about 3 times you've got that in today, Gavin.
I know, it's great. I've just ordered a sweep the leg T-shirt, which I'll be wearing on my podcast from going forward. You're too young to remember Karate Kid, Jade.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, I remember it. It's so good.
Okay then. So when you're, I mean, we're still got another couple of minutes. So just talk to us an average training session on a pre-build up for a fight. What sort of activities, what sort of training do you partake in, Jade?
So I do a lot of strength and conditioning. So that's like quite a big thing, which I've put a lot of time into, especially over lockdown. So I never really considered myself like particularly fit as such, even though I probably was. But now obviously like that goes into it massively. So I like to sort of concentrate on that part, and then that's what I feel takes away any anxieties. If you know you put the work in there, you know you're going to get gashed during a fight. So that part's taken care of. So then the rest of it is just technique and getting your confidence up, like with actually being in there with someone. So at the gym, like leading up, we do shark tanks and stuff like that. You know, and I think that's a huge test mentally for you. And I think if you can get through that, that's going to be harder than any fight you'd ever have to do. And I think it's a real like test of heart. And I think it's something that is so important, you know, so it is massively important. Because like I said, if you know that you can get through your shark, you know that you're going to be fine with other people, with someone that's getting equally as tired as you are.
Yeah.
Just
for our
Jay,
listeners that don't know, can you
explain the
just
Shark
what Shark
Tank?
Tank is?
So basically, you stay in for your duration, and then you have like a fresh opponent every minute. We've changed it up a little bit, just so because like we've done it before where people are just literally just dying, and obviously you don't. That almost just then becomes detrimental. So we've changed it up a little bit, but yeah, effectively that is it. You just have like a fresh partner every minute, or every 5 minutes or so.
We used to do that as squad training, didn't we, Jackie?
We used to call it man in the middle, and basically every 2 minutes or every minute you get a fresh opponent in for about 6 rounds.
Yeah.
And it's just hard work. It's great when you're the last man in and you can just bang people around.
And you guarantee that's where you get your ribs broken right at the end of the session because you're absolutely hanging out.
But it builds character.
Oh, it does.
It builds something.
Keep your guard up, that's for sure. Okay, so we're coming to the closeout then, Jade. So one question that we always try and get a couple of questions in that we can get some quotes from you from. So what motivates you in your martial arts?
Definitely, like what I said earlier, just sort of like leaving that positive footprint on people and just like leaving behind like just that huge influence. Like for me, like if a kid can just sort of look back and say, I done that because of Jade, then I sort of feel like, my work here's done. Like just sort of hearing someone say that, or you motivated me to do that, for me that just gives me such when you thrive off of that sort of thing.
No, definitely, it's rewarding, isn't it? It's, and certainly 100%. For myself and Gavin, we both fought, and I retired probably 3 years ago now from fighting, and actually I get more reward now from coaching and seeing my students progress and winning things or doing things that they didn't think they could do, rather than it was great fighting and winning titles. I loved it, don't get me wrong, but actually I find it just as rewarding now seeing my students doing exactly the same thing. So I get that.
It's almost like wholesome in a way.
It is, and the thing is, you're every one of those kids you're touching. There's some part of them that you're I shouldn't use the word. I shouldn't use the word touching, should I? I was just being careful what I say. Also, there's a part of you that you're leaving with every child, right? Really, they come in, and they've never met you before, and they quickly warn to you, and next thing you know, they're a little snotty-nosed kid, and they're starting to mature a little bit, and you can see that they're gaining in confidence and becoming a good fighter or passing their belts. I know I've got one of my original students when I opened my club 11 years ago. Again, she was one of these kids where I remember thinking, are you ever going to get this? She got to about a green belt, and I remember thinking, she's never going to get this. And now she's just joined the she stopped training with me probably about 4 years ago, and she did the Olympic development thing, the fighting chance, and now she's in the junior Olympics GB team, training full time. And she lives in my village, and she's only 13, and she's out running with her dad. Her dad's biking, and she's running along. Hi, Mr. Cook, But she's reached a level that I can't influence that anymore. She's with she's with an elite team now. But it's nice to know that I gave her that grounding, and she trained with me for 8 years.
You would never forget that either.
No.
There's certain people like in your martial arts life that just always you will never forget.
They have that influence on you, don't they? They say that one thing or that one bit of advice. Now you're right. It's quite a prestigious position as a martial arts instructor because you can influence people's lives so much.
And it's also the stuff that you don't see, isn't it, as well? It's these kids that you would maybe think, he started and he dropped out. But then 2 weeks later, someone picked on him at school and he stood up for himself. You know what I mean? Or which wouldn't have happened without your influence. And there's all these things that you just don't see.
You get to influence a lot of people. And then I think really for our final question then, Jade, we normally ask, what advice would you give a younger you? But it seems you are young, even though you don't think you are. What advice would you give to any young aspiring martial arts females that want to get into the MMA type scenario?
I think just do what you want to do. Don't ever let anyone tell you what you should be doing or anything like that. Like, just do 100% you. Like, never let anyone else's influence deter you away from that.
Perfect. No, sounds good advice. Jade, do you know what? It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. So no, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you very much, Jade. Nice chatting to you. And hopefully we'll be watching you in the on the UFC on Bravo on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
It's BT Sports now, mate.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, they got their own channel, mate. They got their own channel now.
Yeah, true, very true. Jade, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and our Facebook group, The Motivated Martial Artist Podcast.
Or check us out on Instagram, The Motivated Martial Artists,
where you'll see much more content and early insight into some of the interviews and some of the guests and some of the conversations around the things that we're discussing. Hope to see you all next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.